Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. A few years ago, I published a book about globalization and technology services, and on the back cover, my publisher described me as a guru. Now, I didn't get to approve the cover blurb, and when I saw it, I asked the publishing manager, who the hell agreed to that? He said it's just what everybody in industry is calling an expert these days, but how do you really define an expert? Is it an influencer with a big social media following, or somebody with something to sell, or a practitioner with real-world experience? Now, this is something that's been troubling Alex Mead. Alex has worked for many years as a customer experience leader with companies such as the airline group IAG and Rent-A-Kill, and he's been brought in as a troubleshooter at many other brands. He's currently based in Bahrain and is the executive director of customer service experience for a new Middle East startup that's still in stealth mode. So we can't talk about the company at the moment, but in a few months we'll really find out what he's up to at the moment. Now, I've seen Alex commenting often about the sheer number of lists on LinkedIn and other websites featuring the top 50 or top 100 CX gurus. So I called him to find out, is there a better way for us to define who really is an expert in CX? All right, Alex, great. It's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for agreeing to do this. Now, I've seen you complaining several times about the lists of CX gurus. You know, we see them published by many different organizations. And I think the last time you posted on LinkedIn, you know, it seemed to be like complete exasperation that you were just seeing the same names over and over again. So what's the main problem with these lists then?
Well, first of all, the word complaining. Yeah, I'm starting to get a reputation as being the anti-CX influencer, which is not helpful to me or to them. So I have no issue with some of the names on there, and I have no issue with there being CX influencers. But sometimes the same names are also put in a list of world's best CX experts, the visionaries. And to me, I can't think of any of those influencers that I think they've given me valuable insight that makes me think differently about the practical customer experience work I'm doing. So calling them influencers, is that a good thing? To me, an influencer should be someone that influences you to think differently, to challenge the way customer experience is delivered. These influencers, they say things like, hey, customers should be at the heart of everything. Yeah, and that's it, you know. So it's the validity of calling these people the world's best that drives me insane. And there are many people doing amazing things that never appear in these lists.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted to address with this conversation, you know, not just say, oh, here's Alex, the old curmudgeon moaning again, you know. So, I mean, who keeps publishing these lists? I mean, is there some sort of business model underneath these?
Yeah, I do have some info. I'm never going to name names, and I do try to be not slanderous or libelous in anything I say, but there is a commercial movement behind this. It's like a cycle. So there are companies that make money out of the lists only, and the people on the list make money out of influencing. And the technology companies need people to spread the word about the CX tech. So they use the influencers who have the most reach. And it's just a cycle of, this CX Awards is sponsored by technology company X, who have used these influencers to write articles, podcasts, and some of the names on there I know get paid to validate a product or promote it and it exasperates me even more. Exasperate is my word of the month, actually, because they say, hey, use product X. It's great for CRM or omnichannel. And I think you don't have a clue if it's great for CRM or omnichannel. So it's a cycle of self-perpetuation. But the scariest thing I've seen lately is there are one or two of these lists done by one-man companies calling themselves CX Influencer Awards Company. And one of them acknowledged to me in a private message, they never acknowledged it openly, yeah, I regurgitated a list someone else gave me, and they told me they got the list because it was the people who had the most engagements on LinkedIn in the last 2 weeks. So it's so superfluous. The list would be great if they were, here's something that someone's done that other people have said, yeah, that was awesome. You've given me a great piece of CX thought and knowledge that I've not thought of. Doesn't exist. So these lists are just regurgitated, superficial nonsense, in my opinion. But don't get me wrong, there are some people on that list but to me, less than a quarter that I do respect. And they are great CX influencers for the right reasons. But there's some on those lists I personally have worked with in the same organizations, usually in a parent group. And I've thought, oh my God, how do you even have the cheek to call yourself this person? But the last point I do want to say is some on that list, to be fair to them, they don't even know they're on the list. It's a surprise to them to be on these lists. So I don't ever like to talk about the people on the list or even whether they should be there. It's the people not on the list is the biggest issue for me.
Yeah, and that's a good point, I think, because clearly people are ending up on these lists without actually asking or paying to be on there. So I mean, what do they actually achieve? I mean, apart from promoting this same sort of group of experts, what's the end goal?
Well, to me, it's a very clear rule of thumb. I look at the people on the list and I think there's 50 or 100 of you. How many of you are making money actually working for a company delivering customer service, customer experience, contact center improvement? And very few of them actually work for companies leading customer experience. They make their money out of being a consultant, a thought leader, a keynote speaker. So by getting on the lists, they get more visibility. And what scares me the most is I've had conversations with some very senior executives in companies who said they've engaged people because they do a search for CX influencer or consultant that can help me. These names come top of the list. They bring them in and they nearly always tell me, oh my God, there was no substance whatsoever. But what's in it for them is they need to have their name go around on these lists to be asked to talk at conferences or write articles or even consult. So that's what's in it for them. And there is a movement where, again, I won't name individuals, but the people that give the accreditations, the certificates, and then we can have a whole nother conversation about those, who then have the same people that appear on the lists, who then go round and round and round. So it's the simple rule of thumb is the people on the list, to me, should be people that actually can prove they deliver great customer service experience. That's what they get paid for, rather than talking about delivering great customer service experience.
Yeah, so would it actually be better to sort of think about this broken out into different groups of people? So, who are the best analysts focused on CX? Who are the best consultants, advisors, the buy-side practitioners who are actually hiring the BPOs and even the best BPOs themselves? So everybody's in CX, but in a different space.
Absolutely. And actually, myself and a guy called Dennis Wakabayashi, I may have got his surname wrong, but hopefully not. Dennis produced a list last month, and I jumped on it straight away because I'm consistent with my criticism or challenge. And to be fair to him, he jumped on a call with me from the USA, and we realized, Dennis realized, okay, it wasn't fair for him to publish his list. He realized everything I'm saying to you and everything people realize there is much more about CX. So he's suggested we create a thing called the CX Factory. It's a thing that's living and breathing, but it'll be released soon, but it's going to do exactly that. There's no problem with having a top 50 CX keynote speakers, top 50 CX consultants, top 50 CX leaders who will lead your operation, as long as you know exactly what you're getting. So influencer, what the hell is an influencer? Surely there are good influencers and bad influencers, and influencers who can make you think but can't do anything for you. They just give you an exciting speech and then walk off. Or there's influencers who can give you an idea and then lead your entire strategy. So yeah, there needs to be very clear, what is this list of people for? What can they do? And I have no problem with influencers, consultants, coaches, analysts. They're all part of a big cycle, but I rarely see these are the CX leaders who are doing stuff that real customers can experience. Or even these are the CX consultants working with an organization that have just created this amazing thing that means customers go, wow, that's awesome. We never see the substance.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned about the influencers, because we've seen a big rejection of that in other areas such as travel, fashion, and so on. And there seems to be a trend in some of these areas to look at the micro influencer. They don't have the massive following, but they're actually doing the thing that they're talking about, and that could be an interesting development.
There's exactly, and we set up a CXF. I promise you, I'm not setting up a group or anything that contradicts everything I've said. So there'll be no lists, there'll be no paid for judges, no certifications, and we've got a Slack channel. There's about 50 people on there already, but to get into our forum, website, whatever we call it, group, you have to validate. Who are you? If you say you're a CX expert, tell us how. Tell us where you've done that. Give us some proof. And then we want it to be almost like a repository. You go in there and you type, I'm looking for a CX consultant. Here's your list of people that have been validated. I'm looking for somebody just to get on stage with a guitar and get us motivated, which actually is fine if you know that's what you're getting. But don't call them a top CX global expert. Call them someone who can get you excited about CX. By play guitar, I don't mean James Dodkins, who actually I like a lot. He's one of the good guys. So James, don't get concerned if you listen to this. But, there are people who can get you thinking differently. You know what you're looking for and you know what you're getting. And the biggest thing I look at when I see this list it's actually insulting. Every day I'm trying to push amazing customer service experiences that are different to the things we all experience every day that drive us crazy. And I look at the people on these lists, and so few of them have ever had more than this middle management level operations role. And suddenly they're the CX consultants and experts of the world. It's not right. That's what I think.
So, I was going to close just by asking you how you would create a better list, but I think maybe you just made that point. It's all about sort of validating the experience people have then.
Absolutely. So this is, I'm probably going off script. I know Dennis wanted to do a proper release, but we're creating this thing called the CXF. But whether it be our thing or anyone's thing, just be sure that if someone says they're an influencer, okay, an influencer of what? If someone's an expert, how are you an expert? Anyone can call themselves an expert or guru. Just have a validation process, and a 5-day CCXP certificate or accreditation or whatever. That's fine. If that's all they've got, they're going to have had a good 5-day textbook theory course. They're not going to have the war wounds and the burns of taking a call center with an 80% abandonment rate, a delivery function that fails to deliver 50% of parcels on time, emails 6 weeks old, and I could go on and on. I'm sounding like an old git here, but you have to know, is this person talking from experience or just a textbook? So that's what we're trying to achieve with CXF, but whoever does it, it doesn't matter as long. And by the way, the CXF, there's no money being made out of it whatsoever. So I will make no penny. Dennis won't. Gustavo won't. Nobody has to pay to subscribe. And if we would start doing awards on it, it'll be voted for by customers. So we may end up with 100 people max. It may crash and burn, but I'll never stop at least challenging these people. Hey, the top 50 experts. Oh, my Lord. And I don't think I can stop it. That's my concern, but I'll never stop trying to stop it.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.